Hello there, thank you for staying with us and welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I am Victor Matthias. Now, it is over a year since young Nigerians took to the streets to protest the alleged injustices meted out to them by security forces, especially the now defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad SARS. In the process, they made demands tagged 5 for 5 with the immediate disbandment of SARS topping the list, which the government promised to meet. Today on the program, we will examine the demands, the implementation, and the current situation of things in that regard. And joining us today to look at this, we have Gbenga Olorunpomi. He is joining us via Zoom in Lagos. He is a media expert and a member of the APC. Also joining us via Zoom is Ademola Adeko. He is a digital content creator, a writer, a good governance advocate, and a social political commentator. It's a pleasure to have you both join us today on the program.
Thank you for having me, Victor.
Of course, thanks for being here again, Ademola as well as Gbenga. But we also have joining us from our Abuja studio, Martins Obono. He is a lawyer and the team lead of TAP Initiative. He is skilled in non-profit organizations, entrepreneurship, public speaking, public relations, as well as strategic planning. Martins, it's a pleasure to have you as well join us on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
Indeed. So, kicks out the conversation for us, Martin. It's over a year now. What has been the situation?
The situation has been very appalling, if you ask me. It's been very, very appalling because when the vice president set up the judicial panels of inquiries to look into the complaints of young people, especially in terms of the demands for 5 for 5. We expected that all the state governors and all the states will swing into action and take those demands very seriously. But if you look at all the reports that were submitted based on the compilation of Yaga and EI, Enough is Enough, you'll see that over 2,791 cases were documented and were reported as at the time of the setup of the panel. And one of the reasons, you see, out of that, only 25 states came up and did set up a panel. And when they did set up those panels, as we speak, only 3 states or 2 have actually come up and submitted their reports and have made those reports public. Ekiti State is one of them. And 5 out of those states, Anambra, FCT, Enugu, Benue states, and Kogi states, suspended their judicial panels of inquiry. And just where we are close to the 1-year anniversary, the Federal Capital Territory decided to resume the sitting of those panels. And now let's look at the situation itself as to the 5 for 5. So part of the demands of 5 for 5 was justice for people who have suffered police brutality in Nigeria. Up till today, none or most of the people who have suffered injustices in the hands of the Nigerian police force have not received justice and compensations at all. Now, we talked about part of the demands for 5 for 5 was also the idea of checking the remuneration.
Martin, let me just hold you there for a bit and quickly just recap, the 5 for 5, and I'll come back to you, to continue. So as part of that 5 for 5, just a quick reminder, the first one we had was the immediate release of all arrested protesters. The second was justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensations for their families, setting up of an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reported police misconduct within the period of 10 days, carrying out psychological evaluation and retaining of all disbanded SARS operatives before they can be deployed, and this should be verified by an independent body, an increase of police salary, and they should adequately be compensated for protecting lives and property of the citizens. So that's just a quick recap of what the 5 for 5 demands were. But Martins, I'll come back to you in just a minute. Let me quickly go over to our panelist on Zoom, and Gbenga, let me just come to you now to get your own perspective. I mean, it's been over a year, so much has gone down, protests, panels of inquiry, but in your own estimation, how would you say things have panned out since then?
Thank you very much, Victor. Personally, I first of all want to acknowledge that the protests of last year, the ENDSARS protest was one that personally was in full support of, because I'm a father of. I have also, on numerous occasions, suffered from brutalization by some unruly officers. So I was personally in support of the protest. But when we saw that the protesters, the leadership of protesters were just not sure of what victory looked like, of the fact that their demands had been met, and they just didn't know how to wind it down and turn everybody home. Then it was time for
all right, Benga, just hold it there. We're really finding it difficult to hear or see you. We're having it a little bit difficult to see. Okay, I think now we can see you now. All right, so please go ahead.
So, as I was saying, when some of us saw that the leadership of the protesters were not sure what just didn't know how to be back home after their demands, their 5-5 demands were met. Some of them met, some of them didn't met. Then some of us stepped back and tried to see what the protest for what it was. We all know what happened after the riot. There were killings, there were murders, and then, of course, the phantom case of the Lekki massacre, which became the rallying cry for some of the people on social media who just decided that pushing out fake news was more important than the issue as was important to most Nigerians. So when we saw all that, and we saw what the riots got to, I think that was where we all lost it. Now, have the demands of the rioters been met? Was that, sorry, not the rioters, the protesters, was the protest a success? In my view, yes. Why? They wanted SARS ended as a unit, the unit of the tactical unit of the police. They wanted it to be stopped. They wanted it disbanded. It was disbanded. They wanted the president to pay more attention to the issues around security. He did that. They wanted more salaries, better benefits for the police. In June of this year, when the president visited Lagos, he made an announcement that 10,000 more policemen were in the process of being recruited. He also announced that the National Salaries and Wages Commission had been instructed to upwardly review the pay of officers. Now, many people don't even know there's a commission like that. Many people think that, oh, the president just only has to give an order and that would happen. Now, within that time and now, states have been set up judicial commissions of inquiry. And this was what some of us were saying, that the federal government cannot bilaterally set up commissions. It's only states by law that can do that. And many of them have turned in their reports. Many of them are still in the process of doing so. Now,
all right.
Again, if the question to me is that, has there been progress between that time and now? I would say yes. Have all the demands been met? No. Why? Because change is a process and we'll get there.
All right. While we wait to get there, let's also quickly hear from Ademola Adeko, who is also joining us, via Zoom. Ademola, quite a lot of water has gone under the bridge since the program started. Martins gave us a recap of states that have, instituted the panels of inquiry. Benga is talking about how the demands or the protest or the results from the protest, have been, quite successful. But I'll come to you, just to get your own part of the perspective. But Martins, let me quickly come back to you now to get your own perspective. I mean, earlier on, you were beginning to, reel out this, let me just call it now a progress or like a report as to how things have been going, in terms of states that have, put out their inquiry reports and all of that. So what more can you tell us in terms of what has happened, since the past year?
So it's quite interesting to hear that there's been so much progress when there really hasn't been, because up till now, victims of and survivors of police brutality, especially during the ENDSARS protest, majority of them haven't received justice. The ones who have been killed, their families haven't been compensated, or nothing has been done in terms of giving justice to those families. I mean, justice doesn't necessarily have to come in monetary terms. It could also come in terms of, in the form of people who perpetrated the acts, and making sure that they paid for the crimes that they committed against the citizens of Nigerian people. And when you also talk about the massacre that happened in Lekki, the justice hasn't really been done in that aspect also. And so when you look at all this, it begins to, you worry the sincerity of purpose of government, and when they decided to set up all these things, all these panels of inquiries, and also
yeah, let me just quickly hold you again for a bit. Let me just quickly hear from Ademola Adeko, who is joining us as, via Zoom as well. Ademola, I was just asking you earlier on about your own perspective. It seems to be, you know, a yes and a no as the program, since the program started. But in your own perspective, would you say progress has been made or not?
Okay, well, if we want to look at the metrics of to measure if there has been progress or there has been success, let's go back to the 5 for 5 demands by the ENDSARS protesters. The first one, which is the immediate release of all arrested protesters. Up till now, we still have a couple of people, in good number of protesters from last year, who have actually still have been in police custody, and have been in custody from then till this particular moment. And a lot of them are still actually in jail. Now, we talk about justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensation. Apart from Lagos State, I've only seen, apart from Lagos State, I've not seen any other state that have actually embarked on compensation. And then when we even talk about compensation, compensation does not necessarily mean justice. Compensation is one thing. Justice is another thing. You can actually compensate people for losing their loved ones, but if their killers are still out there, then I believe that justice has not been served. Also, you said that setting up an independent body to oversee investigation or prosecution of all reports of police misconduct. Well, till now, we have not seen the materialization of that. You said in line with the new Police Act, psychological evaluation and retaining, you know, of all disbanded SARS officers. In recent times, well, SARS kind of went on a low-key for a while, but I'm sure that they are back now, because recently I've seen videos of police officers still harassing and extorting and physically abusing motorists. There's a video that actually popped up on the internet a few days ago, and I think it happened somewhere in Kogi State, where a police officer actually harassed and extorted people, even followed the passenger down to the ATM or the POS to actually withdraw money from his account. We still have some of these things going on here and there, and then we are talking about success, or we are talking about any form of improvement. Now, we talked about one of our demands, which wasn't even for ENDSARS protesters directly, was for the police officers themselves, in which he said we need to increase police salary so that they are adequately compensated for protecting lives and properties of citizens. That has not been done. We have not heard anything about it. It's been 1 year. Now, nobody is going to expect magic to happen. But if we cannot achieve 1 out of the 5 demands in 1 full year, then I'm sorry to say that the government has done basically nothing. And honestly, there has been no improvement. We can't even talk about success for now. We can't even talk about the government actually taking responsibility, you know, for doing what they need to do.
One of the things that Benga talked about is that, you know, change is a process. I mean, it takes a bit of time. Do you agree with him on that?
Well, I totally agree that change is a process, and it's more of a journey than a destination. It takes time, and that is all really understood. However, there are some things that we call low-hanging fruits. And low-hanging fruit basically means that there are some things that you can immediately implement to actually show, you know, and create good faith in the minds of people. There are some things that there are some necessary steps that the government ought to have taken immediately, especially when it comes to prosecuting police officers that have already been identified in cases of extortion, cases of extrajudicial killing, cases of physical and sexual harassment.
All right.
If the government had actually went, I mean, you have actually prosecuted some of these low-hanging fruits, then people would have faith in the government and say, okay, yes, this is the process. But out of the
Ademola, let me just hold you there for a bit. Talking about things that could have been done within the 1 year that has passed. I'll come back to you on that, but we have to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're watching Channels Beam coming to you live from Channels Television Broadcasting in Lagos. We have our panelists joining us via Zoom and also from our Abuja studio, and we're looking at the ENDSARS protest 1 year since the whole thing started. And just before we went on break, Demola was talking about some of the things. Ademola Adeku was talking about some of the things that he feels that the government should have implemented, in the past year. Ademola, let me come back to you to continue.
Okay, yeah. So, when we talk about these low-hanging fruits, there are some things that, there are some decisions that you can actually take that people will begin to see that, okay, the government is actually doing something. Look at CSP 14, for example, in Anambra State. This guy was actually, accused of killing a young Nigerian and then collecting bribe money from his parents. And after killing the boy, they actually dumped him in a shallow stream where they asked his father to go and look for his body. Till today, CSP 14 is still a free man. Now, when I say low-hanging fruit,
it's an accusation, it's an allegation, it's not confirmed. So, I mean,
yes. But we have the stream where we have the bodies of the corpses of people that were dumped. So, launching an investigation into that, and then bringing CSP 14 in for questioning is one of the ways to actually show faith. Now, it's an accusation, it's an allegation. But in the situation where the government is trying to show people that, look, we are doing something about police reforms, I see no reason why that CSP 14 has not been called in for questioning. At least that's the first step into, the whole process. So if he had been called in, besides some other police officers who have also been identified, we have so many videos and pictures of police officers carrying out illegal activities online. You cannot tell me that it's so difficult for the Nigerian police force to trace some of his own men and bring them in for questioning. Show them the evidences and let them defend themselves. It's that simple.
All right, let me just. I hope that as time goes on, as we're marking this anniversary, all of these will be put in place. But let me just quickly come back again to Gbenga. Gbenga Olorunkomi is also joining us via Zoom from Lagos. Gbenga, so let's look at moving forward now. What do you think can be done differently?
Okay, so first of all, I have to say that I'm disappointed that he's sitting down in that studio and he's a lawyer and he knows he knows how terrible it is for somebody to be making allegations without any proof. He just called what happened in Lekki massacre. I would like to ask him if he has his facts, he can go and share with those at the Lagos State panel of judicial inquiry. That's number one. Number two, Demola has made his 545 case. I want to start with the first one. Immediate release of all protesters. Well, it will be interesting. It will be very interesting if he can share with us, with Nigerians, the full list of the people who have not been released and the cases against those individuals, because it's very, very easy to be emotional about things, but it's much more difficult to be factual. I'm not here to please anybody. I'm here to share facts as I know them. That's number one. Number two, about an independent body supervising the meting out of justice to police. Where in the Constitution of Nigeria does an independent body monitor how justice is meted out? It's a simple process. We said it from the beginning. It's only state governments that can set up judicial panels of inquiry. That has been done. Reports are coming out. It is now the time to act on those reports. And I'm happy that he mentioned that apart from Lagos, he hasn't found any other place. Why is it that the Lagos that has been doing its best to compensate both police and individuals is the same place that protesters are insisting to hold rallies that are not necessary? Many people who they claim, I'm still waiting to see the evidence of this massacre, because God forbid. We've seen what massacres look like. I'm still waiting for evidence, proof that what they say happened. Now, moving forward, what do we expect? I said it before, and Demola probably didn't hear me. The president of the federal government of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, in June, said that he has instructed the commission necessary to review the salaries and benefits of officers, and that 10,000 officers are in the process of being recruited. That's number one. Number two, in 2019, the president signed into law an act that is going to monitor the process of community policing, which is one of the problems that is affecting our insecurity in Nigeria. Number three, this same president said it that in 2020, he's pushed for more. He also signed the law establishing the police security trust fund. Sorry, the police trust fund, which is a fund that will be used that anybody can contribute to help police people in, acquiring trainings and acquiring ammunition and the likes. So, my question to my fellow panelists is this: what else would you want the federal government to do when you yourself admit that many of these cases are in the hands of the state governments to implement? The federal government on its part is doing its best. Maybe we should pay attention to the guys who should be prosecuting cases. It's under the purview of state government to prosecute people accused of murders, police people or not, of committing acts of sexual violence and the rest. It's not. I don't know how else I'm supposed to explain it. So what do I expect moving forward? Since the president has made these concessions and has made these moves to improve the welfare of the police, and the state governments are setting up these commissions, it will be interesting if the protesters can sit down, look at all these reports from all the states, and look at the ones that they think the states should take first and move swiftly to getting justice.
All right. So let me let me just give Demola the right of reply quickly, because we're winding down the conversation. Demola, let me just give you a minute, to reply some of the questions that he posed to you before we go.
Well, I don't know, but I think that maybe Benga thinks that we are stupid, but we are not stupid. So this thing is actually pretty clear. When you start to make decisions, people begin to see steps, they begin to see changes. 365 days is not too small for us to start seeing changes. And then, now, to the entire thing, and I mean, I'm going to wrap up everything that you have said in just a very simple statement. Now, you said all of these things. None of these things have actually come into effect in terms of real time, in terms of real life. All of these are just statements on paper. 1 year has gone past, nothing has.
Unfortunately, we lost Demola during, as he was making this, the internet actually has put him out. And of course, I'll just quickly say thank you for joining us, Demola, as well as Benga. But Martin, let me just come to you to wind down the conversation for us. Of course, you've heard the back and forth, from Benga and Demola, and also Benga also shot one at you. So let me just give you also that right to reply before we close.
Thank you so much for the right of reply. I basically think that Benga has a lot of loss of memory as to what happened in Lekki, 20th of October 2020. He has all the indices of a massacre, so if he probably didn't remember, I can refresh his memory. The lights were turned off, people were shot at sporadically, and there were even witnesses who weren't at the protest ground itself, but were just within the premises of that protest ground, that heard the gunshot and heard people crying and shouting and wailing. and there were live bullets that were actually fired at those people. So it's very sad and appalling to see or hear somebody come up here to say that there was no killing, there were no killings. There was somebody actually whose reports we were just listening to before I came here, whose younger brother went to that Lekki toll gate to protest. And his sister, he went to visit his sister in Lagos. And when he got there, he decided to join the protest. Until date, his mom, his sister, they've not been able to find him. That is the kind of criminality that we're talking about. And nobody has been held accountable as to whether or not what happened. These people have been to hospitals, they've been to morgues, they've been to police stations, and they've been almost everywhere looking for the remains or even the body of their brother or their son, and nobody has been able to find that. And someone sits down here to say that nothing happened in Lekki, no criminal activity happened in Lekki. It is just sad.
Let me and just... So, we're running out of time, unfortunately, Martin. I wish I could let you go on, but I have to say thank you so much for joining us today on the program. I mean, all of you said, of course, it's all have been documented at the panels of inquiries across the states, like you made mention of, and hopefully, as time goes on, we'll get to the root of, you know, what actually happened at the Lekki toll gate on that fateful night. But I have to say thank you for joining us today on the program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's the program today. Thank you for being a part of it. You can find our most viewed videos on our social media handles, and of course, we'll be back again next week with another interesting topic. Thank you for watching. I'm Victor Mathias.